The empty gymnasium holds its breath in the aftermath of fourth period. Fluorescent lights hum overhead like mechanical insects, casting harsh shadows across the polished floor. In the corner, beneath a stack of wrestling mats, something glints black against the institutional beige, a wrist guard, worn smooth by years of disciplined training. The leather shows telltale signs of impact conditioning, careful scoring along the edges where calloused knuckles have tested their limits against heavier bags than any 16-year-old should know. Claire Stone's fingers brush the hidden gear through her oversized hoodie as she changes for gym class. Her movements carry a precision that contradicts her quiet demeanor. When she thinks no one is watching, her posture shifts, spine straight, weight balanced on the balls of her feet, eyes scanning the room with tactical awareness that seems almost military in its efficiency. But someone is always watching at Jefferson High. And today, that someone has been planning this moment for exactly 6 months. I'm building a community of people who believe in the power of preparation and self-defense. If you also believe every child should have the ability to protect themselves, hit like to support this message. Subscribe to see more stories about quiet strength. And if you want your children to feel confident and safe, the thanks button helps me share more inspiring stories. Because what you're about to see will prove that preparation is never wasted. The clock above the gym door reads 2:47 when Dylan Ashford makes his move. Tucker Blake and Ryan Cross flank him like practiced wingmen as they approach the girls' changing area. To any casual observer, they appear to be heading for the equipment room. 3 popular athletes with legitimate business in the gymnasium. Dylan's 4.0 grade average and Honor Society presidency have taught him the value of plausible deniability. His early admission to Harvard rests not just on academic excellence, but on his ability to engineer situations that always leave him looking innocent. The chess club captain has learned to think 5 moves ahead in every social interaction. "Remember," Dylan murmurs to his companions, "this is completely accidental. We're just trying to grab the volleyball net from storage." His voice carries the confident authority of someone who has never faced consequences for his actions. Student council meetings have honed his ability to sound reasonable even when orchestrating the unreasonable. Claire emerges from behind the partition, tugging her Jefferson High t-shirt over her sports bra. The black wrist guard disappears beneath her sleeve just as Tucker accidentally stumbles into her path. The collision appears entirely random, a clumsy athlete losing his footing near the equipment rack. But Ryan's phone is already recording, and Tucker's stumble sends Claire spinning directly into Dylan's waiting hands. The fabric tears with a sound like breaking trust. Claire's shirt rides up, exposing her sports bra to the camera and the dozen students still milling around the gymnasium. Laughter erupts from the gathering crowd, not malicious, just the reflexive response of teenagers confronted with unexpected exposure. Claire's face burns crimson as she clutches the torn fabric. Her hands shake with something that might be humiliation or might be carefully controlled rage. For just a moment, her fingers curl into positions that suggest combat training. But she forces them to stillness as the phone cameras multiply around her. "Oh man, I'm so sorry," Dylan says with practiced concern. His voice carries across the gymnasium with perfect volume, loud enough for witnesses, soft enough to sound private. "That was totally my fault. Are you okay, Claire?" The use of her name feels deliberate, intimate in a way that makes the violation more personal. Dylan's gray eyes meet hers with what appears to be genuine worry, but Claire catches something calculating in their depths, a chess player evaluating his opponent's response to an opening gambit. She says nothing, pulls her hoodie from her bag, and wraps it around herself like armor. The black wrist guard remains hidden beneath the oversized sleeves, but Dylan's sharp gaze lingers on the subtle bulge it creates in the fabric. By the time Coach Williams arrives to investigate the commotion, the scene has already transformed. Dylan stands with his hands clasped behind his back, the picture of a concerned student leader. Tucker and Ryan have melted back into the crowd, their expressions appropriately shocked by the accident they witnessed. "What happened here?" Coach Williams demands. Her voice carries the authority of 20 years managing teenage chaos. "Just a collision," Dylan explains with the measured tone he uses during debate competitions. "Tucker lost his balance near the equipment rack, and Claire got caught in the aftermath. I was trying to help, but—" He gestures helplessly at the torn shirt in Claire's hands. The timestamp on Ryan's phone reads 2:47 and 33 seconds. The video is already uploading to 3 different social media platforms through accounts that can't be traced back to their actual owners. Dylan's 6 months of preparation have included creating a network of digital proxies, students who don't even realize they're part of his information warfare campaign. Claire walks past them all without speaking. Her face remains carefully blank, but her gait carries a subtle tension that suggests coiled springs. When she pushes through the gymnasium doors, the sound echoes like a gunshot in the sudden silence. By 5 o'clock that evening, the video has garnered 50,000 views. Hashtags like Fail Friday and Jefferson High Hijinks trend across multiple platforms as the footage spreads beyond the school's immediate social circle. But Dylan's real masterpiece isn't the viral content, it's the narrative framework he's constructed around it. 3 weeks earlier, he'd approached Coach Williams with carefully documented concerns about Claire's isolation patterns. Academic research he claimed to be conducting on social dynamics in educational environments. His psychology AP coursework provided legitimate cover for questions about withdrawn students and potential behavioral red flags. "I've noticed Claire seems increasingly disconnected from her peer group," he'd explained during their private meeting. His tone carried the professional concern of a future social worker. "As Honor Society president, I feel responsible for identifying students who might need additional support." Coach Williams had been impressed by his maturity, the kind of student awareness that college admissions officers love to see in recommendation letters. Dylan's suggestion to keep an eye on Claire's interactions had felt like responsible mentorship rather than targeted surveillance. Now, as the coach reviews the gymnasium footage, those earlier conversations color her perception. Claire's reaction to the incident seems less like normal embarrassment and more like concerning social dysfunction. The girl's refusal to speak, her immediate retreat from the situation, these behaviors align perfectly with Dylan's previous observations about her withdrawal tendencies. Meanwhile, Grace Murphy sits in her bedroom, fingers flying across her keyboard as she tries to track the video's origin. Her tech skills have made her Claire's closest friend, but they're no match for Dylan's sophisticated digital architecture. Every lead she follows dissolves into dead ends, anonymous accounts, proxy servers, and carefully laundered social media chains that would challenge professional investigators. "It doesn't make sense," Grace mutters to herself. Her multiple monitors display cascading lines of metadata and network analysis. This went viral too fast. The distribution pattern is too organized for random sharing. But Dylan has spent months studying social media algorithms. His systematic approach to information warfare reflects the same methodical thinking that earned him a perfect score on the mathematics portion of his SATs. The video's spread follows carefully calculated pathways designed to maximize exposure while obscuring its deliberate orchestration. At home, Claire sits on her bed with her laptop closed. The black wrist guard lies on her nightstand like a piece of evidence from another life. Her reflection in the bedroom mirror shows a small girl in an oversized sweatshirt, but her posture suggests something harder underneath. The kind of discipline that comes from years of training in arts most teenagers have never heard of. Her phone buzzes constantly with notifications, classmates offering sympathy, friends checking in, and strangers commenting on her moment of vulnerability. Each message feels like another weight added to an already crushing burden. The most disturbing texts come from unknown numbers. "Saw your video. Sorry that happened." And "Hope you're okay after today." And "Message me if you need someone to talk to." They sound supportive, but something in their phrasing suggests a deeper knowledge of her situation, as if the senders know more about the incident than they should. Dylan has anticipated this response. His chess player's mind has mapped out every possible consequence of his opening move. The sympathetic messages come from burner phones and anonymous accounts, designed to make Claire feel exposed and monitored rather than supported. By evening, Principal Carter has reviewed the gymnasium footage. His assessment mirrors Coach Williams's concerns about Claire's unusual reaction to what appears to be an innocent accident. Dylan's months of careful positioning have painted him as the kind of student leader any administrator would trust: responsible, academically excellent, and genuinely concerned about his fellow students' welfare. When the principal calls Claire's parents to discuss their daughter's recent behavioral changes, he references conversations with Honor Society leadership about her increasing social isolation. The framework Dylan has constructed makes every adult response feel reasonable and appropriate, while systematically undermining Claire's credibility. Grace Murphy discovers the first inconsistency on Friday morning. Buried in the metadata of the viral video, she finds evidence of pre-positioning that shouldn't exist. The camera angles suggest multiple recording devices, but only one phone appears in the visible footage. "Claire, look at this," Grace whispers during their shared study hall. Her laptop screen shows frame-by-frame analysis of the gymnasium incident. "See how the lighting changes here? That's not phone camera quality. Someone had actual equipment set up." Claire leans forward, studying the enhanced images. For the first time since Tuesday, she shows genuine engagement, rather than withdrawn silence. Her eyes track the subtle details Grace has identified: professional-grade video compression, editing marks that suggest post-production work, and timestamps that don't align with the supposed spontaneous nature of the event. "How long would it take to set this up?" Claire asks. Her voice carries a sharpness that Grace has never heard before. "If you knew exactly when and where it would happen, maybe 20 minutes. But you'd need advanced knowledge of everyone's schedules, equipment access, and—" Grace's voice trails off as the implications sink in. "Claire, this wasn't an accident." The revelation transforms their understanding of Tuesday's incident. What appeared to be opportunistic harassment now reveals itself as carefully orchestrated theater. Dylan's performance as the concerned helper takes on a sinister quality when viewed through the lens of premeditation. But Grace's discovery creates a new problem. They need adult support to address this level of systematic manipulation. But Dylan's months of preparation have compromised the very authorities who should protect them. Coach Williams views Claire through the filter of Dylan's research, and Principal Carter sees her as a student requiring behavioral intervention rather than protection. That afternoon, Coach Williams approaches Claire with what she believes is helpful support. Her tone carries the professional sympathy of an educator trained in crisis intervention. "Claire, I wanted to check in about Tuesday's incident," the coach begins. Her office feels safe and private, but Claire recognizes the careful phrasing that suggests this conversation has been planned. "I know that kind of exposure can be traumatic, especially for someone who tends to keep to herself." The reference to her tendencies sends warning signals through Claire's tactical awareness. She realizes that her behavior patterns have been analyzed and categorized in ways that will be used against her. Dylan's psychological profiling has poisoned the well of adult support before she even knew she needed it. "I'm fine," Claire responds carefully. Every instinct tells her that this conversation is being documented, either officially or through Dylan's surveillance network. It was just an accident. But Coach Williams has been primed to interpret Claire's minimization as evidence of deeper issues. Dylan's academic framework has given her a vocabulary for pathologizing normal responses to abnormal situations. The coach's well-intentioned concern becomes another tool in Dylan's arsenal of manipulation. Later that evening, Grace makes a discovery that changes everything. Hidden in Jefferson High's digital infrastructure, she finds evidence of systematic data collection that goes far beyond Tuesday's incident. Server logs show that someone has been monitoring Claire's online activity, her class schedules, even her library book borrowing patterns. "He's been watching you for months," Grace tells Claire over an encrypted video call. Her usual confidence has been replaced by something approaching fear. This isn't bullying, it's stalking with academic cover. The scope of Dylan's operation becomes clear as Grace traces the digital breadcrumbs. His research project on social dynamics has provided legitimate cover for surveillance that would be illegal in any other context. Academic freedom protections have created a loophole that allows systematic harassment to masquerade as scholarly inquiry. But the most disturbing discovery comes when Grace finds Dylan's actual research notes. His psychological profiles of multiple female students read like hunting guides, complete with vulnerability assessments and manipulation strategies tailored to each target's specific weaknesses. Claire's file is the most detailed. Months of observation have created a comprehensive dossier that maps her daily routines, emotional triggers, and social connections. Dylan's notes reveal an understanding of her background that goes deeper than any casual observation could provide. Details about her family history, her father's military contracting work, even speculation about her unusual physical conditioning. The final entry in Claire's file, dated 3 days before the gymnasium incident, contains a single line that makes Grace's blood run cold. Subject demonstrates tactical awareness inconsistent with civilian training. Recommend escalation to force revelation of background. Dylan hasn't just been stalking Claire, he's been studying her like a laboratory specimen, probing for weaknesses and secrets with the methodical precision of a trained interrogator. The gymnasium incident was never about humiliation. It was a psychological experiment designed to crack her carefully maintained cover. As Grace stares at the evidence on her screen, she realizes they're not dealing with a typical high school bully. They're facing someone who has weaponized his intelligence and institutional access to create a hunting ground where he can pursue his targets with virtual impunity. The black wrist guard on Claire's nightstand suddenly takes on new significance, not just a symbol of hidden strength, but evidence that Dylan's suspicions about her background might be more accurate than anyone realizes. Monday morning brings a shift in the battlefield. Claire Stone arrives at Jefferson High with a precision that speaks to military planning rather than teenage routine. Her conversation with Grace over the weekend has crystallized their understanding of Dylan's operation. What they face requires strategic thinking rather than emotional reactions. "We can't beat him at his own game," Claire explains as they walk through the hallway. Her voice carries a quiet authority that Grace has never heard before. He's spent months controlling the narrative through academic channels and institutional manipulation. But Grace has spent the weekend analyzing more than just Dylan's surveillance network. Her deep dive into Jefferson High's digital infrastructure has revealed vulnerabilities in his seemingly impenetrable system. The chess master's confidence in his technological superiority may prove to be his greatest weakness. He's been so focused on watching us that he hasn't secured his own communications, Grace murmurs. Her laptop bag contains equipment that would make corporate security consultants nervous. Every research note, every strategic memo, every psychological profile, it's all sitting on school servers with standard educational encryption. The plan they develop over lunch period reflects Claire's growing willingness to engage with the tactical training that has shaped her since childhood. For the first time, she begins to speak about skills that most teenagers never develop. Her father's work in military contracting has exposed her to operational thinking that goes far beyond high school social dynamics. Dylan expects us to react emotionally, Claire continues. Her analysis of their opponent demonstrates the kind of psychological insight that comes from years of studying human behavior under pressure. His entire strategy depends on positioning himself as the rational actor while painting us as unstable. The key insight comes when Grace discovers Dylan's presentation schedule. His academic excellence has earned him a slot at Jefferson High's upcoming Academic Excellence Assembly, where he plans to present his research on social dynamics and adolescent behavioral patterns. The timing isn't coincidental. It provides him with an official platform to systematically discredit Claire while appearing to contribute valuable scholarship. He's going to use that presentation to destroy your credibility, Grace realizes. Her fingers trace through Dylan's detailed preparation notes. He has character witnesses lined up, carefully edited footage from the gymnasium incident, and psychological assessments that paint you as potentially dangerous. But Claire sees an opportunity in Dylan's carefully constructed trap. His need to maintain intellectual superiority requires him to engage in public discourse, where his manipulation techniques become visible to a broader audience. The Academic Excellence Assembly represents both his greatest strength and his most significant vulnerability. Let him present his research, Claire says with growing confidence. But let's make sure the audience has all the information they need to evaluate his methodology. The Academic Excellence Assembly takes place on a Friday afternoon. 400 students, parents, and faculty members pack into Jefferson High's main auditorium to celebrate the school's brightest academic achievements. Dylan Ashford commands the stage with the natural authority of someone who has never faced intellectual defeat. His presentation slides display months of careful research with the polish of a graduate-level dissertation. Today, I want to share findings from my longitudinal study of social dynamics in educational environments. Dylan begins. His voice carries across the auditorium with practiced confidence. Specifically, I've been examining patterns of social isolation and their correlation with concerning behavioral manifestations. I'm really curious about training from childhood. Do you think parents should teach girls martial arts for self-defense? Or does this create too much pressure? Share your thoughts in the comments, because the reaction of the entire class to what's about to happen will change everything. The presentation unfolds with devastating precision. Dylan's academic vocabulary transforms Claire's normal responses to harassment into pathological symptoms requiring intervention. His edited footage from the gymnasium incident supports a narrative of escalating instability, while carefully selected testimony from classmates reinforces his position as a concerned student leader. The subject demonstrates what clinical literature identifies as hypervigilance. Dylan continues. His laser pointer highlights Claire's precise posture in hallway security footage. Note the tactical positioning, the constant environmental scanning, and the resistance to normal social integration. From her seat in the third row, Claire watches Dylan's presentation with the detached analysis her father taught her to apply to operational briefings. Every slide reveals more about the presenter than his supposed subject. The chess master's need to demonstrate intellectual superiority exposes the calculating mindset behind his concern. But Grace has spent the week preparing her own presentation materials. When Dylan opens the floor for questions, she stands with laptop in hand and a confidence that surprises even Claire. "Thank you for that fascinating research," Grace begins. Her voice carries across the auditorium with crystalline clarity. "I'm curious about your methodology, particularly your data collection techniques." The question appears academic, but Grace's next words transform the atmosphere in the auditorium. Her laptop connects to the presentation system, and Dylan's own research notes appear on the main screen. Psychological profiles, surveillance logs, and manipulation strategies displayed for the entire audience to examine. "For example," Grace continues, "these appear to be systematic stalking records disguised as academic research. Could you explain how monitoring someone's library borrowing patterns contributes to your study of social dynamics?" The auditorium falls silent as the scope of Dylan's operation becomes visible. Months of surveillance data scroll across the screen like evidence in a criminal investigation. His psychological profiles of multiple female students read like hunting guides, complete with vulnerability assessments and exploitation strategies. Dylan's composure fractures for the first time anyone can remember. His perfect academic mask slips to reveal something calculating and predatory underneath. "That data was obtained through legitimate research protocols," he responds, but his voice carries a defensive edge that contradicts his usual confident authority. "Including this note about forcing revelation of background through escalation strategies?" Grace asks. Dylan's own words appear highlighted on the screen. "That sounds less like research and more like psychological warfare." The evidence continues to mount as Grace displays communication logs showing Dylan's coordination with Tucker and Ryan. Their supposedly accidental collision in the gymnasium reveals itself as carefully orchestrated theater designed to trigger Claire's protective responses. But the most damaging revelation comes when Grace shows the auditorium Dylan's actual research hypothesis. His study wasn't examining social dynamics. It was testing methods for identifying and exploiting students with unusual backgrounds or training. "Intelligence without wisdom is just elaborate foolishness," Claire says as she stands. Her voice carries across the stunned auditorium with quiet authority. For the first time, she allows her tactical bearing to show fully. The precise posture, environmental awareness, and controlled movement that Dylan has been documenting for months. The black wrist guard emerges from beneath her sleeve as she removes her hoodie. 12 years of disciplined training become visible in her athletic conditioning and the subtle scars that mark serious martial arts practice. Her transformation from quiet student to trained operative happens in seconds, but the psychological impact reverberates through the entire auditorium. "My father taught me two things," Claire continues. Her words carry the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "Be prepared and protect others who can't protect themselves." Dylan's perfectionism dissolves as he loses control of the narrative. His chess player's mind has anticipated every possible response except Claire's willingness to reveal the very background he's been hunting. The intellectual framework he's constructed to discredit her collapses when confronted with the reality of her preparation and purpose. You see, the fascinating thing about psychological patterns is they're so predictable, Dylan says desperately. He attempts to regain intellectual authority by throwing Claire's tactics back at her. This entire performance demonstrates exactly the kind of concerning behavior I've been documenting. But the auditorium has seen enough evidence to understand the true nature of their conflict. Dylan's sophisticated manipulation techniques become transparent when displayed alongside months of systematic stalking disguised as academic research. "For someone so smart," Claire responds with growing confidence, "you never learned the difference between being right and being wise." The aftermath of the Academic Excellence Assembly spreads through Jefferson High like wildfire. By Monday morning, Dylan Ashford's carefully constructed reputation lies in ruins. His Harvard early admission faces review as university administrators examine the ethical implications of his research methodology, while Honor Society leadership revokes his presidency pending a full investigation. But Dylan's intellectual sophistication means his defeat carries complications that simple bullying situations never generate. His academic allies continue to defend his research as legitimate scholarship, while his family's legal team challenges the unauthorized release of his private documents. Principal Carter finds himself navigating a public relations nightmare. The systematic nature of Dylan's surveillance operation raises questions about institutional oversight that extend far beyond typical disciplinary matters. Parent-teacher conferences become crisis management sessions as families demand explanations for how such sophisticated harassment could operate under academic cover. The problem with being the smartest person in the room, Claire tells Grace during their first normal lunch conversation in months, is forgetting that rooms aren't isolated systems. Claire's victory comes with its own set of challenges. Her public revelation of tactical training creates a new dynamic where every future conflict will be viewed through the lens of her capabilities. Some parents express concern about having a trained fighter in their children's classes, while others demand to know why the school failed to identify her background sooner. The most persistent consequences involve ongoing reputation management. Dylan's transfer to Brookfield Preparatory Academy comes with glowing recommendations from faculty who view his research as academically valuable despite its problematic methodology. His new environment provides fresh opportunities to refine his manipulation techniques with subjects who have no knowledge of his Jefferson High operation. Grace receives her own form of retaliation. Sophisticated cyber attacks target her digital infrastructure with the kind of precision that suggests professional-grade resources. Her laptop suffers mysterious failures, her social media accounts face systematic reporting campaigns, and her college application essays disappear from supposedly secure servers. "He's not done with us," Grace warns as she rebuilds her security protocols. The attacks demonstrate operational capabilities that go beyond typical teenage revenge. This feels like psychological warfare designed to create long-term damage, rather than immediate satisfaction. Claire's family faces the most significant disruption. Her father's military contracting work requires security clearances that become complicated when his daughter's background enters public awareness. The systematic attention Dylan's research has generated creates operational security concerns that force difficult decisions about their future in the community. But the most troubling consequence emerges weeks later. Coach Williams discovers evidence suggesting Dylan's methodology has been replicated at other schools in the district. His research appears to have inspired a network of academically gifted students who view systematic harassment as an intellectually interesting challenge rather than a moral failing. "Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything you thought you wanted," Claire reflects, as her family begins planning another relocation. The stability they'd built at Jefferson High dissolves under the pressure of public attention and ongoing security concerns. The investigation into Dylan's operation reveals institutional vulnerabilities that extend throughout the educational system. Academic freedom protections have created loopholes, allowing sophisticated predators to operate with virtual impunity as long as they maintain scholarly cover. 6 months later, Claire Stone stands in the gymnasium of Roosevelt High School. The unfamiliar surroundings carry echoes of her Jefferson High experience, but this time she's prepared for what might come. Her black wrist guard remains hidden beneath her sleeve, but her awareness of potential threats has evolved beyond tactical training into something approaching wisdom. The new environment brings fresh challenges. Roosevelt's social dynamics differ from Jefferson's hierarchical structure, but Claire recognizes similar patterns of power and vulnerability that require careful navigation. Her reputation has preceded her through social media channels, creating a complex dynamic where some students view her with suspicion while others seek her protection. Claire, right? The voice belongs to Emma Walsh, a sophomore whose nervous demeanor suggests familiarity with systematic intimidation. I heard about what happened at your old school. The conversation that follows reveals disturbing parallels. Roosevelt High has its own academic predator operating under research cover, though this perpetrator focuses on documenting rather than directly harassing vulnerable students. Emma's description of being constantly observed and analyzed brings back memories of Dylan's initial surveillance phase. It started with him asking about my family situation for some sociology project, Emma explains. Her words carry the careful precision of someone who has learned to document everything. But then he knew things about my schedule, my friends, even my therapy appointments. Claire recognizes the pattern immediately. Intellectual harassment disguised as academic inquiry, systematic observation justified through scholarly cover, and psychological manipulation presented as concern for subject welfare. Dylan's methodology has spread beyond Jefferson High, refined and adapted by students who view human suffering as an interesting research problem. Would you like to learn some techniques for protecting yourself? Claire asks. Her tone carries none of the tactical aggression that Dylan's research documented, but rather the patient authority of someone who understands the difference between strength and violence. The training sessions that develop over the following weeks focus less on physical techniques than on psychological resilience. Claire teaches Emma and several other students how to recognize manipulation tactics, document suspicious behavior, and build support networks that can't be easily compromised by sophisticated predators. The black wrist guard finds a new purpose when Claire passes it to Emma during their final session. The worn leather carries the weight of tradition rather than just protection, symbolizing a legacy of preparation and mutual support that extends beyond individual circumstances. This represents discipline and responsibility, Claire explains as Emma accepts the guard. Not the power to hurt others, but the wisdom to protect those who can't protect themselves. The network that emerges around Roosevelt High demonstrates how individual courage can create systemic change. Students learn to identify academic harassment, document predatory research, and support each other through institutional challenges that adults often fail to recognize or address. Grace Murphy's technical expertise proves invaluable in the new environment. Her experience with Dylan's surveillance methods allows her to design counterintelligence protocols that protect student privacy while maintaining academic transparency. Her digital literacy workshops teach vulnerable students how to secure their online presence against sophisticated monitoring attempts. But the most significant development comes when Principal Martinez approaches Claire about creating an official peer protection program. Roosevelt High's administration demonstrates the kind of institutional wisdom that Jefferson High lacked, recognizing that sophisticated threats require sophisticated responses. Your experience with systematic harassment has given you insights that could help other students, Principal Martinez explains. Her tone carries genuine respect rather than the patronizing concern that characterized Claire's interactions with Jefferson High's administration. The program that develops reflects Claire's understanding that true protection comes from empowerment rather than dependence. Students learn not just to seek help when threatened, but to recognize threats early and respond with coordinated community action. Dylan Ashford's influence continues to spread through academic networks. His research methodology has been adopted by students at multiple schools who view psychological manipulation as an intellectually satisfying challenge. But Claire's counter-network demonstrates that wisdom and preparation can create effective resistance even against sophisticated predators. The final message emerges through actions rather than words. Intelligence without moral foundation becomes elaborate cruelty, while preparation combined with ethical purpose creates lasting protection for entire communities. As Claire watches Emma help another nervous freshman navigate Roosevelt High's social complexities, she sees the continuation of something larger than individual strength, a tradition of mutual protection that transforms isolated victims into a connected community capable of recognizing and resisting systematic predation. The black wrist guard passes to new hands, carrying forward the promise that no student should face sophisticated harassment alone. That preparation creates confidence, wisdom guides strength, and community provides the foundation for lasting safety. In distant Brookfield Preparatory Academy, Dylan Ashford continues his research with new subjects who lack knowledge of his previous work. But the network Claire has inspired ensures that his methodology faces increasingly effective resistance from students who understand both his tactics and their own power to resist them. The legacy extends beyond any single school or situation. A growing awareness that academic cover can disguise predatory behavior, that institutional protection requires community vigilance, and that true strength comes from empowering others rather than dominating them. The network Claire has inspired spreads through unexpected channels. Social media platforms designed for academic collaboration become early warning systems where students across multiple districts share information about suspicious research projects and predatory behavior patterns. Grace's digital literacy workshops evolve into a sophisticated communication network that allows vulnerable students to seek help before situations escalate to dangerous levels. Within 3 months, reports emerge from 7 different schools describing similar academic harassment schemes. Each follows Dylan's methodology with local variations, suggesting either direct coordination or widespread adoption of his techniques. The pattern reveals a disturbing trend where intellectually gifted students view systematic psychological manipulation as an acceptable challenge rather than a moral failing. Roosevelt High's peer protection program becomes a model for institutional response. Principal Martinez presents their approach at regional education conferences, demonstrating how schools can acknowledge sophisticated threats without compromising academic freedom. Her presentations emphasize that protecting students requires understanding modern predatory techniques rather than simply hoping traditional anti-bullying policies will suffice. We're not dealing with old-fashioned harassment anymore, Principal Martinez explains to packed auditoriums of administrators and counselors. We're facing students who have weaponized intelligence and academic privilege to create hunting grounds within our institutions. The response varies dramatically across different schools. Some administrators embrace comprehensive reforms that address academic harassment, while others resist acknowledging that their highest-achieving students might pose systematic threats to their peers. The institutional divide reflects broader cultural tensions about accountability, privilege, and the responsibilities that come with intellectual gifts. Claire's role in this expanding network evolves from survivor to strategist. Her unique combination of tactical training and first-hand experience with academic predation makes her an invaluable resource for schools struggling to address sophisticated harassment. Her consulting work with education professionals focuses on recognition patterns that allow early intervention before situations reach crisis levels. The most challenging cases involve students who have adapted Dylan's methodology to exploit cultural and linguistic differences. International students and recent immigrants face particular vulnerability to academic harassment, disguised as research into cultural adaptation patterns or language acquisition studies. Emma Walsh emerges as a natural leader within Roosevelt High's protection network. Her experience with systematic observation has given her an intuitive understanding of predatory research techniques that proves invaluable in training other students. The black wrist guard she wears represents not just personal protection, but her commitment to extending that protection throughout her community. The guard isn't about fighting, Emma explains to new members during weekly training sessions. It's about remembering that preparation creates options, and options create safety. The tradition spreads beyond Roosevelt High as students transfer to other schools. Each new environment receives the gift of tactical awareness and community-building techniques that transform isolated individuals into connected networks capable of mutual protection. The physical guard itself becomes less important than the mindset it represents. Vigilance balanced with wisdom, strength tempered by responsibility. Meanwhile, Dylan's activities at Brookfield Preparatory Academy face increasing scrutiny as word of his Jefferson High operation spreads through academic circles. His new research projects trigger closer examination from faculty advisors who now understand the potential for abuse within student-led scholarship. His intellectual gifts remain formidable, but his operational freedom has been significantly constrained by institutional awareness. The ongoing tension between Dylan's sophisticated methods and the growing resistance network creates a dynamic equilibrium. His ability to identify and exploit vulnerable students meets increasingly effective community responses that limit his access and impact. Neither side achieves complete victory, but the balance shifts toward protection rather than predation. 6 months after the Roosevelt High program begins, Claire receives an unexpected message. A student from Pacific Northwest Academy describes a research project that bears Dylan's unmistakable methodology, but notes that their school's peer protection network successfully identified and reported the suspicious behavior before any students were harmed. The message represents something unprecedented, a systematic predator's techniques being recognized and countered by students who had never met his previous victims. The network effect has created institutional memory that transcends individual schools and specific situations. As Claire reads the message, she understands that the true legacy of her Jefferson High experience extends far beyond personal vindication. It has sparked a cultural shift that acknowledges sophisticated threats while empowering communities to respond with equal sophistication. The black wrist guard tradition continues to spread, but its meaning has evolved. No longer just a symbol of hidden strength, it represents the visible commitment to community protection that transforms schools from hunting grounds into sanctuaries where intellectual gifts serve wisdom rather than exploitation. In quiet moments, Claire sometimes wonders about the students who might have been Dylan's victims if her situation had unfolded differently. The thought reinforces her understanding that individual courage, when multiplied through community action, can create protection that extends far beyond any single person's reach. The network continues to grow, adapting to new threats while maintaining its core commitment to mutual protection. Each participating school becomes a node in a larger system that values preparation, wisdom, and the strength that comes from empowering others to protect themselves and their communities.